Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is April 30th, and right now the time is Eastern Time at 3 p.m. Welcome. And here is our dear friend, Tom. Tom, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
So nice to see you. Thank you so much. And Tom worked in FBA for 30 years, and he served as assistant director for FBA for almost 5 years. Thank you so much, Tom, to join us on today. And we're going to
Thank
have,
you.
sure, two topics. And these two topics, I think lots of our audience are very interested because it's related to them or their kids. One is about the college protesting right now. It started in Colombia, and then right now it looks like a national movement. And yesterday I read an article that said in Tokyo, in Japan, the college students start to protest just like what the college student here are doing right now. So it looks like it's a world movement. So we have a lot of audience. Their kids are in college right now, so they're worried or they're wonder what's going on here. First, people think it might be just 1 week or a couple of days, and then it's not. It's opposite direction. So that's one thing we would like to hear from you. What's your opinion? What's your observe for these movement, if we can call this as a movement? And second is about marijuana. There's a news right now. It's just popping that Biden administration maybe will legalize the marijuana in federal level. So what's that mean to the young people, to the society, if you legalize marijuana in the federal level? So these are the two questions for today.
Okay.
Yeah. So first, Tom, what do you think about the college pro-Pakistan movement?
I think that, well,
Wild.
first of all, one of the things to try to distinguish with the movement is that if they're just out in outside of the campus or outside the buildings and they're in the open area and they're protesting, then, under the United States system, that's freedom of speech, freedom to assemble under the First Amendment.
Mm,
Now, if you threaten people so that the protesters, if they start threatening Jewish students or take violence against them or illegally enter buildings when they're closed and trespass or do criminal damage to property, which
mm,
now we've seen that some windows have been broken, particularly at Columbia.
right.
When that happens, then that's against the law. That's not protected by the First Amendment. The Constitution doesn't allow you to destroy somebody else's property or to physically hurt another person. So that's where, when they cross the line, then that's when they're violating, uh, state and local laws, much less federal. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this is you see these movements, especially at Ivy League schools, and
Mm-hmm.
of course they get the attention. So if you personally or one of your children are going to Columbia, Yale, Harvard, Princeton, you're paying a small fortune for that student to go there. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I hear this current year, I don't have one of my nieces going to an Ivy League school. They're
Mm-hmm.
doing some other, off campus stuff right now. But if you were paying $90,000 a year for room, board, tuition, fees, and the transportation to go to and from New York City, where Columbia is, or Boston, where Harvard is just outside of Boston. When you're doing that, and all of a sudden now at Columbia is a good example, there's still, another month of school left.
Mm-hmm.
And the campus now, if you're paying that small fortune to be going to school, and all of a sudden they say, well, because of the protesters, we're going to deny you your opportunity that you've paid for already
Right.
to be in school, in classroom, on campus, and we're going to send you home, and you can learn at home like it's COVID all over again, which actually taught everybody. Apparently, not the people that run these colleges; they're not that smart. But it taught all the rest of us that the year or two being locked up and using Zoom to try to learn at home was ineffective. And it's one thing to be ineffective. It's bad enough if it's an elementary school or high school student, but look at when you're paying close to $100,000 a year to attend one of these Ivy League schools. Now, what's interesting about that is that I know, I think in the Asian culture especially, it's really important to save face and to have your kid go to an Ivy League school. You want to be able to brag to everybody else, my kid went to an Ivy League school and the best in the country and all of that. And, 2 years ago, just to give you a personal aside, 2 years ago, I was invited to speak at the annual alumni dinner where I went to college, which was Governor State University in University Park, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. It's not an Ivy League school. But I pointed out when I spoke to everybody, faculty members and students and alumni at that dinner, I said, let me tell you something. My 29 and a half years in the FBI, when I made supervisor, assistant agent in charge, assistant director of international operations, I had many Ivy League graduates that worked for me. So suddenly, whatever payments their parents made to put them in Ivy League schools, it didn't keep them from being a subordinate to me when I was a manager all the way up to senior executive. So, it's important, and these are good schools and all of that, except it's not everything. So I'm wondering now with some of these parents that students are at Columbia or they're seniors about to graduate, and now all that's canceled. If maybe they have second thoughts, they might have been better off at the University of Virginia or the University of Illinois or, an outstanding state school that are considered one of the best in the country, instead of this thing that, my kid, I have to be able to tell all my friends, my kid goes to an Ivy League school. Well, now they can say, my kid's at home on Zoom, thanks to my Ivy League school. So congratulations.
So it sounds it's really unfair to the kids from Ivy League and to the parents.
Absolutely, because you're not, as far as I'm concerned, they should be able to sue the school for fraud. They paid $100,000 or maybe $50,000 for the spring semester, and now they're at home. So they're not getting the product they paid for.
Right.
And the ability to be, let's say, for example, you're going to law school at Columbia. Well, in a law school, one of the biggest learning methods is to be in a room with your fellow students, fellow professors, and be able to have discussions about the nuances of the law. Especially think of that right now with everything going on in these Trump trials and all of the persecution he's going through. There is a lot to say about some of the motions that have been made. What does it mean when Trump says a president should have immunity from the decisions they made while president, if they were official decisions, that they can't be sued by every 2,000 plus prosecutors in the country later when they're out of office? And think of that. Think of what the Supreme Court must be debating that right now before that decision is issued. That what would this mean right now for President Obama? Decisions that he made, or Bush, or Clinton, they're still alive, or Carter for that matter. And so you look at the fact that they made a decision or multiple decisions practically every day that later people could sue them for. Let's take Biden. One of the very first things he does as president is shut down the Keystone Pipeline. There were already thousands of workers that have moved to the Midwest, moved to the where the property would be, to open restaurants, to open hotels, to service the workers. Look at the workers themselves that sold their homes or moved out of other cities in the country and bought property to be near the pipeline, near their work. And so then Biden comes in day one and says, I'm closing it on a whim. You have thousands of people that lost a lot of money when he
right,
shut down the pipeline, not to mention just losing the oil itself from
right.
getting into the American economy.
Like
So
for damage.
that's just a good example of a decision he made. Or what about the decisions that I think are unconstitutional that Biden has allowed the southern border to be
Mhm,
wide open now for over 3 years?
mhm,
And look at the people in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California that
right,
have been hurt,
mhm,
robbed,
mhm,
you know, victims of crime from some of the migrants coming across the border.
mhm,
Um, not to mention, if you're in another state and somebody in your family dies of fentanyl overdose,
mhm,
I said this, on my other podcast, Operation Truth, back when the New Hampshire primary happened, and the people in New Hampshire were saying the border was, especially the Democrats, were saying the border being open was their number one issue. And
mhm.
you would say, well, wait a minute. New
Yeah,
Hampshire's 2,000 miles from the border. Why would that be? Because people, their neighbors, their children, others, people they knew were dying of fentanyl, which
mhm,
means New Hampshire and every state in the Union became a border state
right,
because of the illegal drugs coming across that were
right.
killing American citizens and other people in our country. So I think that these issues, a simple issue. My point that I was trying to make, making a long story longer, was that if you're in law school
Mhm,
or in a history class or some other sociology class at Columbia, you need to be with your fellow students to debate that. Now,
definitely.
right now, you and I are on a Zoom call. And so I see your beautiful face taking up so much space on my screen, and I'm taking up, I don't know how much space on your screen with my fat face.
Mhm.
But if this was a classroom and we had 100 other people on this, imagine what these little thumbnails would look like with each one. Or when somebody started to say, I have a question, sir, and now what? How do you have a discussion, is what I'm getting at, in this kind of a medium for that purpose. And if we were having this discussion on a Zoom call and you could barely communicate and send the message, the other people can't really see your body language or how you're phrasing the question, all of that, then
It's a
what's the point?
problem.
And that's why, and then we
Mhm,
don't wonder, we know, we just can't, people aren't supposed to say it out loud, it'll be banned on YouTube, that the kids that were at home learning for 2 years during the COVID lockdowns are 2 years behind to this day.
I
And,
agree.
and they haven't caught up yet. So there's ramifications from the medium that you choose to communicate in. And that's why in college, important colleges, Ivy League or not, you need to be in the classroom with the
Right,
professor and with your fellow students so you can engage in a discussion
right.
and learn from that.
Right. So this raised me another question is the Ivy League students, they're smart, no question about that. And their faculty, they're outstanding on their field. Um, Based on what we see here in the States, we have so many problems right now in this country, in our life, everyday life. So why these kids are not protest for the wrong policy of the government to make our life miserable? Instead, they protest for thousands of miles away for the Palestinian people. I'm not saying that it's not good or that's bad, but why don't you take care of your life first and then the other people's life? I think
Sure.
they're smart enough to realize that, right?
And they ought to be smart enough to realize that this isn't purely spontaneous on all these protests at all of these campuses where they're occurring in the country and now including Japan. That, I've read a number of reports that groups that finance terrorism and groups that finance anything, just normal trouble, like Soros, that they're helping finance these students. All of a sudden they show up on a campus, several hundred of them, many of whom don't even go to that school. They show up anyway, and they have all these professionally made signs and banners and all of this stuff.
Right.
Or like like we saw during Black Lives Matter, the Summer of Love 2000, with
Right.
BLM and Antifa showing up at these things, and they had these giant signs, which they could later use as clubs to try to beat up police officers with and other innocent people. And people were going, "Where'd that? How'd they get that? Where'd they get the money to buy those signs?" They just all of a sudden a rental truck rolls up to the location, and they start unloading signs to hand out, and weaponry and sticks and clubs and broom handles. So that's the same thing here. Where does all this stuff isn't spontaneous that all this money is showing up to pay for the signs that they're using in the protest or the other stuff? And when these campuses are shut down, especially if the protesters do not even go to that school. And Columbia University is not a state school of the state of New York. It's private property.
Right.
So when these people are on that property, they can be taken away as trespassers, kind of like January 6th, people were trespassers. Right. They could be arrested and taken away. When the school, typically what we're seeing with these liberal schools and liberal administrators, because they're so woke, they're more woke than the rest of us. When they tell the people that you better be out of here, you have 3 days to get out of here. Otherwise, we're going to arrest you. Then 3 days go by. Well, we'll give you 3 more days. You better get out of here. We're going to arrest you. But they got, and I told the story. It reminds me of my godmother, who used to threaten her son that was my age at the time, and we were teenagers. "Stevie, if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to beat you within an inch of your life." I heard that 1,000 times. She never touched him. Never touched him. So this is kind of what these, she could actually be an administrator at one of these Ivy League schools. If you don't stop that trespassing and breaking property and hitting Jewish people over the head and doing all this, we might arrest you. We might do something. So that's the problem I have, is that there's no control and there's no respect for authority. There's no respect for the police. And then I pity, we send the poor police into these situations, and then they're the ones that get hurt. They're the ones that get beat up by peaceful protesters. And I'm so tired of hearing that term. Well, it's a peaceful protest.
So everybody seems to know that Soros and his gang behind these protests make it violent, make a peaceful one become a violent one. So, well, maybe this question is kind of not too smart, but I really want to know that, can we do anything with Soros and his group?
Well, so far, the problem, when you say everybody knows, I don't think everybody knows. If you have mainstream media covering up for the fact that most of the prosecutors in big cities in this country, the Democratic strongholds, are Soros backed and put in there by him. So do you hear that when you watch CNN or MSNBC or any of the broadcasts? Do you hear that? Do you learn that, oh, by the way, here's what Soros, and now his son is taking over, same thing. And they've got these PACs that they put money in that are paying for all of the crooked politicians that are getting put in place, whether it's the state's attorney in Northern Illinois, or some places they call it district attorney, like Alvin Bragg in New York City, wherever it might be. And you look at how did they get the money to campaign for those jobs? Because typically those jobs, if you're a loyal Democrat, loyal Republican, and you get picked to run for that office, there's not a lot of money in that. They don't use a lot of money in those campaigns to buy advertising, to buy posters, to buy, people to go door to door. However, with Soros-backed money, they have all the money they need to have all the signs made, buy radio and TV advertising, to put out all the message that they want. And whoever they're running against, who didn't expect that, all of a sudden they're like, now what do I do? And especially, you look at a city, take New York, for example. If you're a Republican and you're going to run for district attorney in Manhattan, how much backing are you going to get financially as a Republican compared to Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor that's a Democrat? getting tons of money to get in office in the first place. So I think that that's the problem with the system, is that you don't have, our founding fathers in the United States 250 years ago said our democracy will be all right. It does depend on an informed public. That's why we want freedom of the press. That's why that's in the First Amendment to the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, that we want honest and free and clear reporting. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden we don't have it. Nobody's doing anything to really do it, because to go after a reporter or an anchor or some of these people, well, we can't have that. That's against the Constitution. So the problem is, though, all of the reporting that's going on is very one-sided. And so a lot of people, they have no clue when they go in to vote for somebody who they're voting for. If they haven't, they only know, they see the Democrat name on there, they know all about that guy or woman. But on the Republican side or the independent side or the conservative side, they don't know.
Wow. So let me jump out of the box. Right now, people are focusing on the problems we're facing now. So if we have the rights, if we have the authority, what's the blueprint to solve the problem? We see the problem. Thank you for mentioning that not everybody see that, but some people see that. Then we should have a way to solve the problem. So where are we? What do you see the way? Do we have a way if we have the authority, if we have a power?
Well, I think to inspire the people to vote, to get involved in that process, and then to get involved with their state and local governments to try to put into place fair elections so that they don't have these drop boxes and people are dumping hundreds of extra ballots in them that's illegal, or the voter registration is illegal, or any of that. That if they can help ensure, get involved, somehow, talk to your neighbors, talk to, whoever, go on podcasts like this and spread the word that we need people to pay attention to this. And, you always hear the expression, every election comes up, this is going to be the most important election, and we've got to save the country, and we've got to save the union. Well, unfortunately, that expression has been used so often, it's like the little boy crying wolf.
Right.
Yeah, we've heard that before, so what? But this time, it may not be the tipping point, but it's very close. And when you hear, especially, Biden doesn't do much campaigning, sure. But his people and him, when they put a statement out and you look at that and go, what will that mean? What will the ramifications of that mean to our society, to our legal system, to all of that? People have to pay attention and listen. So, Biden, my opinion is he talks and he puts all these statements out, and you can determine on your own if you think they're truthful. That's right. Another story. But the only way to hold them accountable is don't get them reelected. And that's where the problem comes in.
Sure. So the key word is people. People wake up, people just involved on the processing and very heavily involved. Just like you said, maybe people is not alert enough. We don't have enough people. So that's the thing. We need a people power. And so talk back about the college movement. Let's put this word movement. So if Soros is behind, of course he's behind, and his group is behind that. What do you think their purpose is? What they want from the protest?
Well, I think Soros, it's what he's always wanted, to have the United States basically crash and burn. To have the United States system taken down through Marxism, through extreme progressive policies and all of that. So I think that for Soros, when you have this kind of stuff happening, I think that movement, him and now his son, Alexander, has taken over. This is what they want. They want our system to go broke,
Mhm.
and illegal people come in and take over, and somehow they're going to sneak them in to be able to vote. All
Mhm.
these policies that they're doing, they're not just liberal. Oh, we're so woke, we're so progressive, we want this for the good. No, 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 no. These are all policies designed to hurt the country. And the
Mhm.
more they hurt, the more they like it. And I think that's where the problem comes in. And for the general public to not learn about this or not pay attention to what's happening, and all of a sudden, gee, why have the prices of groceries gone up 20% in 3 years, or gasoline, or taxes, or interest, or all of these things, like it's some kind of accident?
Mhm.
And 3 years ago, when Biden came in, was it an accident that he inherited such a strong economy and all of these systems that were going so well, and then set about to destroy it? United States being, with regard to energy, the cost of energy is significant across the economy, across the board, because it affects the prices of groceries. If
Right.
the diesel, to fill up a diesel truck to deliver the goods from the farms and the
Mhm.
distribution centers in the agricultural area to grocery stores in the big cities in the east, let's say, um, that costs a lot of money to fill those trucks with diesel fuel,
Right.
hundreds of dollars for each fill up. And so now, if that price goes double, where's that? You're going to catch that on, if you pay no attention at all, who cares what energy cost is?
Mhm.
Well, if you buy groceries, you care. If you buy gasoline for your car, you care. If you buy heating for your house or apartment, you care.
Mhm.
But if you don't know how this works to link it up, you know, now what? You have basically, I don't want to say ignorant or stupid voters, but you have uninformed voters. Now, if they don't go out of their way to try to get informed, if they
Mhm.
just keep listening to these same news organizations feeding
Right.
them nonsense, then they're contributing to this.
Right, right, exactly. So if you have chance to talk to the parents who has kids in college right now, and maybe the protest will affect them, what are you going to tell these parents? And also, if you have chance to talk to the college kids in the colleges right now are protesting, what you will tell them?
Well, the problem, let's start with the kids.
Okay.
Those kids have been starting to be indoctrinated from the time they're 4 or 5 years old in school. They're already being told by the progressive woke teachers that they should doubt what sex they are. Are you really a little boy? Are you really a little girl? Maybe we should start giving you pills. Maybe we should start sterilizing you by the time you get to be in eighth grade or into high school. And, this is crude, but if you doubt your sex, then maybe we should change it. And we can change it, the so-called puberty blockers, to not let your body switch to what it really wants to as you're maturing. Or we could cut off your breasts or cut off your genitals and help you become a man. And I think that oops, I think that's the problem. I might be losing my power here for some reason. But anyway, I think that that's where the problem comes in to me, is that we're already indoctrinating these kids from the time that they are in school, in early school, all the way up through the end of college. Now, what's interesting is that back in the 60s and 70s, I went to college in the 70s. Back in those days, people thought, okay, these kids are being indoctrinated to be so liberal and all of that. Just wait till they get out in the real world. They'll get over that and they'll become conservative. They'll become interested in merit and ability that way. And then what's happened is that those kids that were becoming indoctrinated in college, then what? They end up teaching in college, spreading the indoctrination to their students down the line. So now you have, from grade school teachers to high school teachers to college teachers, you know, so they're the ones, they've gone through this whole system, been indoctrinated. And instead of going into the real world where you need to have merit to get ahead, no, then we create a system where LBGTQ, your sex, your whether you're trans or lesbian or whatever you might be. We're going to use that to decide whether you get into the college or whether you graduate from the college. And then, to add to the stupidity, we have these kids in second, third, fourth grade where we bring in these people to dress up and I forget what you call that, the
right,
transgender or whatever, spreading that word. So you have these women dressed like prostitutes in
right,
third grade classrooms and trying to indoctrinate the kids. So now what's that going to tell us 20 years from now? We're going to have the same liberal professors that we have now.
right.
Even though right now they're just little kids in school, but we're going to make sure that they fit right in to that progressive woke philosophy and that they spread that later. And that's where the issue comes up, is it's self-perpetuating that creeping Marxism. You don't have it being put to rest when people get in the real world that's competitive, that's capitalist. You have to make a contribution to your company or to your, whatever institution that you're supporting. And instead, we want to eliminate that and say, no, anybody, if you're the right sex, that's all. If you're trans, you get a special break.
So, what kind of advice will you give to the college kids today? Any advice you will give it to them?
It'd be very hard to me. I think it would be very frustrating to even try to give them advice because, as I said, and I can remember, it's kind of common that parents, especially, will tell you that when their kids suddenly are teenagers, they know everything. You can't tell them everything. They know everything. And the idea was that when they're no longer teenagers and they get into college, they have to compete with other people. When they get out of college and get into the real world, they have to compete. Or to go to graduate school, they have to compete. And now what they're saying, if you go in and tell them, you better pay attention, you're going to have to compete, knowing that they might not have to compete. That there's a number of institutions that the only competition is don't be white, don't be gay, don't be straight, have all of these letters ticked off, LGBTQ plus plus. If you can count on one or two of those letters in your background, don't worry about taking exams. Don't worry about competing to get into the school. Don't worry about competing for jobs. And you see this, and I'd be anxious to see some of the studies of where you have companies. For example, I fly United Airlines frequently, and you see in their opening pages of their magazine, Hemisphere, where they brag about how they pick, their pilots, their mechanics, and all of that they're woke, that they support trans, that they support whatever color, they are. Well, okay, great. You have diversity, you have equity, you have all those things. Now, I would like to know, why is it that Boeing aircraft flying around the country have doors falling off in flight, have these mechanical issues that are life-threatening? How's that happen? Who is maintaining? Who are the mechanics? Who are the supervisors of the mechanics? Who are the CEOs of these companies allowing this stuff to happen? And not just nicely, used to be a door falls off the plane in flight. I remember years ago, Aloha Airlines flying from one island in Hawaii to another one, having that happen. And one of their flight attendants got sucked right out of the airplane and killed. Now, that was so rare, isolated incident. Oh, this never happens. And now in the last couple of years, it's like over and over and over.
Right.
We have mechanical failures in these aircraft that are very complex, and if not maintained, dangerous. And nobody seems to worry about it. Nobody wants to get to the bottom of what happened. Now we've got this ship, the Dali crash into the bridge in Baltimore Harbor, collapsing the entire bridge. And, National Transportation Safety Board investigation going to get to the bottom of it. Or what happened here? Now we know that the FBI has been on that ship. The FBI has been looking at it. The FBI has been interviewing people in Baltimore Harbor to try to find out, wait a minute, you were having power failure problems. You were having issues before that ship ever left the dock, ever left the harbor or tried to leave the harbor. And did you know that you had these problems? Did you know that, the power might go out and the ship would go run into the bridge and bring it down? These are all important questions. And then my question is, do we trust the government now to tell us the truth? Will we hear exactly whose fault this is and who's liable and what happened here? I don't know. How much confidence do we have that we're going to know exactly what happened?
So it looks like that someone need to be blamed, not the kids, but the society itself. And the society itself, like today, we're not happy. Our audience will not happy about what's happening right now in this country. And this is the result that we're not paying attention enough for past 2-3 decades. We allow this happen as people. We're not getting involved enough. So what we need to do is maybe not give the advice to the kids, but give advice to ourselves. We need to involve more and more.
Because we're the parents. We're supposed to be the authority figures. It's not up to the kids to decide this because they don't know. And they've had this indoctrination for 20 years before they get to the campus of Columbia. So what do they know and how much can you trust it?
Exactly. Fair enough. And then, so talk about the parents, like what you want to say to the parents.
I would say, if you want to save face in your community, then don't put so much pressure that your kid has to go to an Ivy League school. Have them go to a state school. There are some outstanding state schools. We have the best college system in the world, not just Ivy League. But ensure that your kids end up in a really good school with a degree that'll be useful and that will help them in the real world. And that's how we can change this. And then you can tell your neighbors or your community, well, my kid didn't go to an Ivy League school, but you know what? They're CEO of this software company, or they made it to be a senior executive in the federal government without going to the Ivy League school. So I think that, that's an important message it has to get to. And especially, China, for example, right now has been averaging over 350,000 students from China to come to U.S. schools. And that's because they want to be able to tell their neighbors, my kid's going to school in the U.S. My kid's going to an Ivy League school. And I would say to that, get over the need that it has to be an Ivy League school. Just because you pay $100,000, you could go to a local state college that has really good professors, maybe a commuter school like the one I went to. Most of the students that went to Governor State University then and now commute to it on the Metro Railroad system down to the campus from Chicago. They have regular jobs and they're finishing school at night or even in the day, and then they're working at night. But that school, to me, the education that I got there was outstanding, and it prepared me in the real world. And actually, I was going to school at the same time I was working in the real world at that time as a police officer in the south suburbs of Chicago. And I think that's my message. And, when I gave that speech a couple of years ago, I might have insulted a few people in the audience who were sitting there in a regular state-supported university, but maybe they already had kids going to an Ivy League school. Maybe they're sitting at their dinner table going, wow, this is okay, this Governor State University, but my kid goes to Princeton or Yale or Columbia. I don't have to mess around with these state schools. Well, okay, then let's find out 10 or 20 years from now, what are those kids doing?
Right.
What is their position in the world? Like I said, I made it to senior executive service and had a lot of subordinates that went to Ivy League schools. So it doesn't have to be overrated. You can rate it very high, and it's a great education, especially depending on the subject matter. No question about it. But it's not the end all, beat all if you don't apply yourself and take advantage of any education you get.
Sure. It's like a devalue of the Ivy Leagues.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. And then I saw some audience. They have some feedback. And now, Tom, so glad to see your show. Appreciate to let us know the truth. And then said, my son is in Emory University. It would he will be graduated in May 12th, coming soon.
Congratulations.
Yeah, same here. I told him, please do not join the protesting. I'm worrying about the graduation ceremony on time. If the protesting is still going, it's too terrible. Oh, I said the ceremony may be canceled. His sounds, yeah, that's happened.
Yeah,
it will happen more. And then now the second question of today. Well, thank you so much for the information and for you to explain what's going on. And then tell us the truth is not enough people know the truth. That is the truth for today. And we need to do something as best as we can on to just inform people or talk to people or just get involved, vote. And this is what we can do to clean up the mess, to create a better world. So that's one thing. The other is about I think it's a bad news, but I might be wrong. Biden administration just announced that well announced, not announced yet, but probably in a few weeks, was that marijuana has been designed as a Schedule 1 drug since 1970s, along with SLD and heroin. And Biden administration maybe move the marijuana out of the government's most restrictive drug classification. So this is a huge movement of the federal government. So what do you think about the movement, and what do you predict what's going to happen? Is marijuana very dangerous or not?
Well, in some ways, it's more dangerous than people are aware of.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back to in the 70s, I was a police officer on the street. Mm-hmm. And if you made a traffic stop, somebody was speeding and they rolled down the window, you could smell, the marijuana smoke coming out of the car, that they were smoking marijuana in the car. Sure. And in those days, what you were charging when you made an arrest of somebody for driving while under the influence of it or what, you would seize their drugs and send it to the lab. And the determination in marijuana, the active ingredient that is the hallucinogen, the ingredient that makes you high, is called tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. And so when you're prosecuting someone, it's actually, you're prosecuting them for THC. Okay. Because marijuana can, parts of the marijuana plant don't have it, and some do. You have people, some using these gummy bears and all that have some elements of marijuana in it, not necessarily THC. Mm-hmm. But when I can remember as a police officer in those days, the average THC content of marijuana was about 5%. Okay, so, and THC, think of THC like if you get a bottle of whiskey, you don't say the whiskey is the hallucinogen, it's the alcohol in the whiskey. Right. And so with marijuana, it's the THC in the plant that's the hallucinogen. Now, I've been reading all of these reports, some of them in psychology magazines and other medical journals, that doctors are increasingly seeing a psychosis caused by excessive marijuana consumption. And it's the consumption of marijuana today that has THC, excuse me, approaching 30, 40, 50% content, extremely potent and extremely dangerous, that it can affect the mental health of the person using it, especially if they're using it. The nickname was always they're a pothead, meaning that they're excessively using pot, with the nickname for marijuana. And so, that's one of the big issues, is that they want to legalize the marijuana and not tell you that this marijuana today is way more powerful than what it used to be 50 years ago. So that's the problem with it. Now, you have doctors, and what we've seen, the degree of censorship now, when doctors report something, or when a study is conducted and put on YouTube, whether it's, a university or a medical lab or some of that, oh, that's fake news, or that should be banned, or that's misinformation, we should take that off. Well, there are a number of highly regarded psychologists and psychiatrists that are saying it's not fake news, that marijuana today is way stronger than it used to be when commonly used. Now, right now, as you mentioned, we have the double system. So at the federal level, marijuana has been legal all these years. But at the state level, many states have outlawed it. And now many of those states are legalizing it. So if you're driving in Colorado, you'll see the shops on the strip malls that are selling marijuana, or selling the components of it, or the paraphernalia to use it. It used to be against the law to have drug paraphernalia in your car when you were driving. That was the clips that held the cigarette, the pipes to smoke it in or to mix it in, or all of that. That was paraphernalia of drug use, and it was illegal. Now, mostly, nobody's going to enforce that law anymore. And especially at the federal level, unless they're bringing in, a truckload of marijuana, it's not going to be enforced even at the federal level. So now what Biden is doing is basically saying, well, everybody's going to use it anyway. And probably secondarily, that if everybody's high, they might be more likely to vote for me.
Okay, so that's is his purpose.
Probably not, but that's my theory.
So it will really hurt the society.
Well, if you have large numbers of especially young people becoming psychotic because of this new, more powerful drug in their system, of course it'll hurt. Yeah, it'll hurt us.
Cannot imagine if the THC is 50%, even 30%, it's 6 to 10 times compared to like 1970s.
Right.
I heard some people say marijuana is not that dangerous. Maybe that's based on the 5% of THC. But if the THC is like 30%, the whole story has to be changed. It's dangerous. Hello, Tom. Yeah, I think Tom just maybe disconnect. Well, he'll be back. And then we can use this moment to read another message. Hold on 1 second. Okay, he's back. He's back. Hello, Tom. Hello, Tom. Tom. Tom's right now, he's trying to use his iPhone. I think maybe his laptop just lost the battery. Hey, Tom. Hey, Tom. Okay. He's trying.
Okay, do you have me now?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming back. All right. So we have another audience. He left a message said, feel so sorry for these kids who are graduating this year. Most of them graduated from high school without graduation ceremony 4 years ago due to the pandemic. Now again. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I feel so sorry for these kids.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. So Tom, you think that right now the marijuana is not the marijuana before,
Well, certainly it
right?
depends who you buy, where you buy it, what kind it is.
Mhm.
It's different brands, different potency.
Okay,
And I've never used it, so I'm not an expert, but I've
sure.
read about it and read some of the medical journals and seen some of the doctors that, have published YouTube videos and other videos on Rumble and TikTok and other places saying that it's not as safe as they're trying to make you believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's still dangerous. And the modern drug, is a very concentrated compared to what it used to be.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for telling us the information. I think it's so important for us to understand what's happened here. And I really appreciate it, Tom. It's a very, very, very important message because when the federal legal the marijuana, I believe that more and more people, especially young people, will have chance to use it because it's easy to use it. So they need to understand what dangers they're facing to.
Many young people are well aware of the dangers and they talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
um, because they have friends that are using too much, that they'll say that, he or she's a pothead. So they're always, you know, drunk or, shouldn't be driving a car or shouldn't be operating heavy machinery.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's other effects of the excessive use of any drug that you lose ambition, you lose desire to excel and to do the best you can at whatever occupation you have or what you're trying to do. So I think that that's where, and I think we're kind of going full circle. You've had schools drop SAT requirements, drop, admissions requirements. And like in Oregon, the Northwest of the United States, extremely progressive.
Right.
And now all of a sudden they're bringing it back. Even Harvard saying, we're going to go back to having entrance exams. We're going back to have people compete. And it's a shame because we were really happy to just pick people because they were black or gay or trans or some other, pick another letter, or color on their flag and say, that was good enough. And all of a sudden now, the professors that are teaching some of these classes that are really good at trying to do a good job are recognizing that some of these people have no business in being in class. A good example, by the way, somebody that I have a lot of respect for, named Thomas Sowell. And he's been a professor in a number of Ivy League schools. He's black, and he's talked about that the damage of letting a kid get into a school, take the place of someone else who could compete and be qualified, put
Mhm.
them in there, and then in a year or two, they flunk out. Who's served by that? They had
Right.
no business being allowed to be in that classroom situation. And they could have been in another school and had some type of remedial education or
Right.
training or something. And it's still been useful later on.
Mm-hmm.
But instead you have them go to this school and flunk out. Who gains from that?
Right.
So that's part of the problem here.
Everyone's losing.
Yep.
Yeah. So the well, so today we have two very I think it's very important topic is one the college protesting and the other one is about the marijuana. So we when my intake is when our government doing the bad thing, have the bad policy, at least people need to know that is a bad policy. And you need to know how to reject that. So I think it's very important message from Tom. And I really appreciate that. And we have about 2, 3 minutes. Tom, you want to say something to our audience?
No, do you have any questions coming in?
Um, no question, but just they just talk to us like discussing. Not question, but just tell the Emory University they canceled the graduation ceremony, and then the other audience said that the kids right now being canceled the graduation college graduation is the same group of kids that their high school ceremony has been canceled. So this is really sad to these kids.
Yeah,
And
it is very sad. It's unfortunate.
yeah, I know. I feel so sorry for these kids. And then when the college, like Elite's college, went wrong direction, we just wish the parents will know what we can do. And the kids are the victims, according to Tom. Tom, right? Um, you consider the kids as the victims, right? The
Well, the kids are victims, and then you have the parents or whoever was paying for that education are victims, or the student loans. And now these kids, if they've borrowed hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to one of these schools and they don't even have a graduation, and then later, they've got student loans, maybe some of them have student loans over several $100,000, and they go out to try to get a job. You might have a number of employers say, I saw your campus shut down. I saw you not be able to graduate. I've seen all of this. How valuable was your education?
right.
Excuse me.
Yeah, right.
I have a tickle in my throat.
So we as a parents, what we can do, as Tom told us, is uh, first of all, we need to inform ourselves. We get out to search the real news and see what real happened in the society, in the world. And then we get involved to the like local politics life and vote, have people vote and inform people. That's what we can do as a parents to like protect our kids or maybe to give our kids a better future. Because just like Tom said, that our kids, for their education for this 10 plus or 20 years, they already have experienced very bad influence from extreme lefts. So we need to do something to change the whole environment. What we can do is the first thing first to vote.
No, exactly. And then again, I think my message, and I'm pretty biased but I'll admit that, is for parents, stop competing with your friends and
Right.
neighbors and other people.
Right.
And especially, you probably know many people and have their kids in American schools from China or move to the United States and put their kids in these schools. And they need to know that they don't need to be in an Ivy League school to be able to be competitive or to be successful in life. It's
Right.
going to be how much in the long run we're going to get back to merit mattering, which it doesn't right now. So when we get back to where the color of your skin or your sex or your original sex or any of that is not going to be as important as how hard did you work to
Right.
get ahead? How much dedication did you put into your studies? How much are you contributing to the country?
Sure.
And if you're not doing any of that, the whole story is you need to go to an Ivy League school, then that's no good.
Wow, that's so important. Thank you so very much, Tom. I
Well,
agree with
thank you for having me on again.
definitely. I really agree with you. And this is the first-hand experience to the parents. Well, thank you again, and thanks for our audience and for their kind feedback and everything. So this is our English version, and I will do a Chinese version later today. Again, thank you so much, Tom, for your time and your service to the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheyenne. My pleasure.
Well, see you next week, Tom.
See you next week.
Thank you so much, and taking care of yourself. I heard you coughing a lot.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
just got to dry. I forgot to bring water with me. My wife just brought me a cup. God bless her. So my throat got dry from talking too much. That was the problem.
Well, we
And then
loved.
the other problem was, I always have these issues.
Uh-huh.
And what happened today is that I accidentally kicked the wire and disconnected my laptop, so the
Oh,
power ran out.
oh,
So it
really?
wasn't. So I'm using my iPhone now at the end of the
Oh,
to
well,
finish the interview.
oh, that's it. That's a good one. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good week.
Yeah, you too. See you next time.